Before we begin, please note that this episode includes discussion of suicide and other emotionally heavy themes. We encourage listener discretion, especially for those who may find these topics difficult. Previously on Chat 62.
And then I get to the 82nd, I'm even more cockier, right? So I didn't have to act any different. And the greatest thing about infantry guys is, as infantry guys, like when people are like, man, did you see racism and stuff like that in the Army, right? We didn't care what color skin you were, right? You're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, we didn't care. Because at the end of the day, we had a job to do and we had to do it great, right? We had to have each other's back, right? Like I used to laugh because I had a guy who was one of the other team leaders when I was at Fort Bragg. He's this country redneck, racist as hell from Georgia, right? That's just how it is. Family's racist. Oh, you would have never known. You would have never known, right? Because when it came to doing this job, he was great at it. He never looked at me any different, and we're best of friends. But that's just the ability to be able to have those different type of backgrounds. 80 seconds, a big old melting pot, right? So you're gonna have guys from all the way around the world that come from different backgrounds.
Real quick before we start, we've streamlined our contact info. From now on, if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future guests, just shoot us an email at chat62podcast@gmail.com. All right, let's fucking go. So for Fort Bragg to Fort Hood.
Yes.
Okay, so Fort Hood is in Texas.
Yeah, Fort Hood's in Texas. It's in Killeen, Texas.
All right, cool. So you're closer to home?
Closer to home. I think at that point, I want to say I'm like 2.5, 3 hours away from home. Didn't know what I was getting myself into when I went to Fort Hood. I knew it was going to be a lot different. You hear the horror stories about Fort Hood, right? First cav. I knew it was going to be, I knew I was leaving light infantry. So I knew it was going to be some type of, I was going to be in a tank, mechanized, something similar to that. I wanted to try something different because in my opinion, how it was in my career is like the more well-rounded you are, the better you are as a leader. So I wanted to try something different. So I did light infantry the 4.5 years. So I was like, let me try Fort Hood and then be closer to home. So I got sent to 3CR. It used to be called 3ACR, Armored Cavalry Regiment. Then it got changed to 3rd Cavalry Regiment. When I got there, it was heavy company. They had just started strikers. I didn't even know what a damn striker was, to be honest with you, because I was like, what the hell is a striker? So yeah, they're pretty much training people on strikers when I got there. It was a big eye-opener for me for sure, because I wasn't used to that type of less of motivation unit, I guess you could say.
They weren't as tightly wound as it was over there in Fort Bragg.
Yeah, I would probably say they're a little bit slow speed than high speed in a way. Like I said, it matters what platoon you get in and stuff like that. But, they're just the soldiers in general. Like, they just had a different mentality of, ways. Like me, I was like, I'm doing 82nd. We're better than fucking everybody, right? And these guys just like, oh, I can barely pass a PT test, right? Yeah, so it took a while to get used to. And then, you meet guys that, that you start a whole new brotherhood. So it was like starting over all over again, right? So, I still had my friends from Fort Bragg. I still had Tibbs, on speed dial if I ever needed to call him. He was doing good things in his career. And then, I get to Fort Hood, and it's something new. It's something different. It's strikers. I didn't know what a striker was. At this point, I had I already had my first daughter at Fort Hood. I had my second daughter right before I deployed to Afghanistan. So before you go to Iraq or Afghanistan, you either go to JRTC in Louisiana. If you're heavy mechanized unit, you're going to go to NTC in California. So pretty much I knew we were going to go to NTC, so I had an idea we're going to deploy to Afghanistan. I went to NTC. My daughter was born while I was at NTC, so I kind of missed her birth. And then I got home, was there for a month, and I was gone pretty much her whole first year to Afghanistan. But rewind a little bit, I got a little too forward. I almost didn't make that deployment. I almost got released from the Army. So when we were doing striker training, I got in a vehicle rollover in a striker. So it was probably about 5 or 6 of us in a striker. We're doing training so we can get qualified on the striker. I'm pretty much the gunner at the point, the TC of the vehicle. I'm outside the hatch, kind of telling him like, hey, go wherever we're going, slow down, trying to see outside the hatch. And he's hauling it. And like most military guys, we've done it every deployment. We break into the system, the headphone system, and play music instead of hearing each other out, right? So we kind of jailbroke the system, and We're listening to music. He can't hear me when I'm telling him to slow down, and we're coming to a T intersection.
Oh.
And he tries to slow down, but then he overcorrects himself, and then we go flipping. So practically we went 4 ways flipping. The funny thing is, my bad, I rewind a little bit. I had just had surgery on my elbow. So I had a fractured elbow, a torn tendon, and flattened nerve. So I had surgery. I had a plate and screws put in.
Was that a result of the jumps prior?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a little bit of a trauma that I had prior injury. I had fractured it in high school.
Okay.
Just with jumps in general, I think it was just wear and tear in my elbow. So yeah, I ended up going to the doctor. They did X-rays. They're like, "Yeah, you got a fractured elbow, torn tendon, flattened nerve." So he ended up doing the surgery. Surgery went great. Had full range of motion. Was getting most of my range of motion back. I think I was out at that point like 2 months. Just got my cast off, and I was like, okay, let's just jump right back into it, right? So into the striker we go. We hit this T intersection, tell him to slow down. He doesn't slow down as quickly as possible, overcorrects. I'm outside the hatch. I'm not wearing a harness. None of us are really wearing a harness. If you're going to be in one of those, wear a harness, right? They're not there just for show, but we look at them with something for show. And practically what happened is I threw myself down, I tried to hug onto the gunner's chair, because all the gunning now is inside. It's all robotic now, right? You don't even have to exit the hatch anymore, other than just changing the ammo and stuff like that. So I go down there, I hold on to the chair, we flip around. Now I'm at the ceiling going down, and I'm going down to my neck. I don't want to break my neck, so I place my arm down, not realizing it's my new constructed elbow. So refracture it again. So it goes in there again, takes out a screw, shaves a lot more stuff down, fixes it up a little bit. At this point, I'm on profile for like 5-6 months. Then they're going to med board me. And in the med board portion of things, there's 3 things that can happen. You stay in your MOS, you change MOSs, or they medically discharge you out of the military. I told myself, well, I can do everything. My push-ups look a little bit weird now, but I can still do push-ups, but I'm still physically fit to be able to do this. So I had to convince the Army to keep me in. All they did was keep me in, give me a push-up profile, and I was like, this is stupid. I'm still going to do push-ups, but yeah. And they kept me in. So I ended up going to Afghanistan, which honestly was the best thing ever. Took over a squad, was a very brand new squad leader. That's when I met Trent. Trent was there. He was a weapons squad. No, he was the first squad leader, if I remember correctly. Then we had another guy I think we had mentioned. He was our weapons squad leader. He ended up being our platoon sergeant. Not very motivated at all. No shame to him, but I still had that mentality, that Fort Bragg mentality, or just the mentality that I had growing up, that I was going to outshine everybody. And taking over a squad, that was my biggest goal. I was going to outshine you, make you look bad. I was going to make sure our squad was better than everybody. I don't care if they're, we're all in the same platoon. We have I actually have that sign somewhere. Oh, it's in my what's it called? It's my living room. We had our little guide on. It says, we're second squad. We're just better than you, or something similar to that. The other squad leaders hated it, especially Trent. He hated it too. But it was just that cockiness to want to be better, and that's how exactly what my squad was, right? But at that point, I knew as a squad leader, my leadership style had to change in a lot of ways, right? Because as a team leader, like I said, all I knew was to yell at guys, and then I knew the Army was changing. And the great thing about great leaders, the best leaders I've ever had, are being able to adapt and overcome, and be able to, the best way to achieve things is you just become a different leader. And I feel like a lot of these organizations, old school mentality Army just doesn't work anymore. Old school mentality cop just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I had to change my leadership style, more of a, people were like, oh, now you give them a little bit too much slack or something similar to that. But my biggest thing is, to build trust, they had to be able to see you go through the same things that you're making them do, right? So like I told my guys, if I'm ever going to make you do a push-up, I'm going to be doing a push-up with you. If I'm going to make you run, I'm going to be there running with you, right? I'm never going to tell you something I'm not willing to do. And that's where most of my trust came from. So went to Afghanistan with heavy troop, good deployment, ended up getting chosen to leave the platoon and take half of another squad from a different platoon, and then my squad, and be attached to the Green Berets. So it was a very prideful thing for me, because one, I was a very brand new squad leader. The other squad leaders have been squad leaders forever, or been in the Army a lot longer than I have. So I knew that, they put a lot of trust in me, knowing of the work I'd done prior to that, right? So it meant a lot to me when they chose me to do that. So did a lot of good things with the Green Berets, practically ran security for them. We'd move outpost every, certain amount of time. I ran their whole security for them. We gunned and we dismounted for them. But it was a great deployment, just seeing a different tier of the Army and what they have to offer, right? These guys are professionals of what they do. And how they do it is just, in my opinion, awesome, right? Like they all have their specialty. And my guys loved it, right? Because I always tell my guys, hey, you got to start from the very basics of things. And these guys drilled the basics of what they do. And that's why they become, great at what they do. That's one of their main focuses of the Green Berets is to go out there and train different armies and stuff like that, because they're clearly experts in their craft. And, it was eye-opening in a lot of ways, because they have their own rules and regulations and certain ways they do things. And, their rules of engagement are a lot different than ours. So I'm there like, man, I don't know if I'm getting myself in trouble. But, yeah, that was different in a lot of ways.
If the Green Berets did it, I guess I could too.
Exactly, right? They grow a beard. I guess I could grow a beard. Right? We grew our beard because I didn't have a platoon sergeant or a platoon leader telling me anything. I was pretty much in charge of the whole thing. So some of our guys, grew up a little bit longer facial hair and stuff like that. But it was an eye opener for sure. But it was great learning from those guys. We were with a different group the very first time, me and my guys, and practically we're going to a mission. And I first time squad leader, now I have guys or more guys depending on me. And then we get into a vehicle rollover. My guy gets knocked out. My driver, he loses control. He gets completely knocked out, blacks out. The special forces gunner gets paralyzed.
Oh.
And I want to say, one of the Afghan army guys, I want to say that were in there too, ended up dying. So we're stuck there now because we just got in a vehicle rollover. We got to freaking call, birds in to medevac people out. And these guys got the cool stuff, and they can hear the enemy planning on attacking us again, right? Because the only reason we had stopped initially to turn around is because the Afghan army took an IED, right? So like, okay, we're not driving this route. We're going to turn back around and go back. So we're there waiting for a little bit, and on the way back, we ended up getting a vehicle rollover. Now we're stuck here. So at that point, my guy's blacked out. They say he's dead. I'm there as a squad leader. I can't do much, right? He's not in my truck. I'm in a different truck gunning one of the other special forces guys. And I'm already there like, man, what am I going to tell? He just gotten married. What am I going to tell this kid's wife, right? And you just go back to that and you're like, dude, like, what the hell? Like, and it's hard to hear over the radio because I clearly remember hearing over the radio, like, yeah, the driver's dead. And I'm there like, what the fuck, right? Like, and then my guys are like already crying, right? Because they're like, they're that's their team member, right? And I get it, right? And as a squad leader, I'm there like, bro, like I already lost a guy. Like that's just fucking sucks. I want to say it's like 10, 20 minutes, probably longer than that. I don't remember. They come out, it's like, oh, he's not dead. And he's just knocked out. He's conscious and breathing. I'm like, okay, good, right? But just I remember just hearing that and you're like, dude, like what the hell? Yeah, so they ended up getting medevaced out. We ended up going back. That deployment, like I said, it was a lot of, just running, gunning, few shots at, stuff like that. Nothing really crazy. Special Forces guys did most of the crazy stuff because that's kind of their mission and stuff like that. It was towards the end where I kind of knew at that point, I was at 9 years at that point. I kind of last 2 months of the deployment, I kind of lost my motivation a little bit. I think it was not more because I didn't enjoy the job anymore. I didn't enjoy it around being the guys. It's more I was missing my wife and kids at the time, right? So I had just had my second daughter who I only saw a month. Here I am in Afghanistan. Luckily at that point, I had, my wife, my ex-wife, not my ex-wife, but my wife at the time, she grew up in this type of career, right? Her dad retired as a colonel. Her brother was a captain. They're both officers. One was a colonel, one was a captain. None of them were infantry guys. My brother-in-law, he was a Green Beret towards the end of his career. So she kind of grew up in it. So she kind of knew how the lifestyle was, but it was still hard in a lot of ways. Now I have kids to come home to. So I kind of had an idea I was going to leave or take a little bit of break. So I did a lot of research, and I ended up looking into recruiting.
So what year is this? This is about year 9, you said?
Yeah, I want to say it's about year 9. So I was like, I need a break. And so on my third deployment, like I'll come back. I knew recruiting was a 3-year, you're not going to deploy. So I was like, hell yeah, 3 years not going to deploy, right? So
what year is this?
So I got to recruiting in 2015.
Okay.
So it's about 14 or 15. So my first deployment was 07 till like March 08. Second one was, I want to say 11 to 12. And then 14 to 15 was Afghanistan, if I remember correctly, the years where it's. Yeah, so I volunteered. They're like, if you volunteer, you get your top 5. And I was like, hell yeah, top 5, here we come, right? So yeah, got back from Afghanistan, had to re-enlist again to make up for the 3 years recruiting little tour thing they had. So yeah, went to recruiting, got to recruiting school in Fort Knox. It was stupid, to be honest with you. I put my top 5. I had everything from the South. So I had East Coast, whatever you consider North Carolina. I consider North Carolina the South. North Carolina, I had North Carolina. I had I had Miami, but they weren't going to send me to Miami because I don't speak Spanish, right? So they're like, hell no, not going to Miami. So I had North Carolina, I had Miami, I had Denver, Colorado, the Colorado area, and I had Texas. And then it's based off regions, not just states. So it's just different regions. So I was running out of regions. So I just threw California on there just because I was like, I'm running out of regions, might as well, right? So California was my number 8 out of 9. Yeah. So get to recruiting school. I want to say, I don't remember how long it was, but it's kind of difficult to a point, but it wasn't anything you cannot pass. And I remember they're like, hey, everybody gets their recruiting packet where you're going. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Finally get it. And they're like, yeah, you're going to Livermore, California. Did not know where Livermore, California was. I did not know where anything in California was, to be honest with you. I knew where LA was to a point because you hear LA, you hear Sacramento, San Francisco, you hear those places, right? But I've never wanted to go to California, right? Because in the military is always Texas is better than California. California is better than Texas, right?
That's just not the military, dude. I think that's just it's all around, dude.
Yeah. So it's everywhere, right? It's not just the military. Yeah, it's true. It's everywhere. Yeah, so it was a big old, we're better than you and you're better than us. I never wanted to go to California. So they ended up sending me to Livermore. And I remember looking up Livermore and then looking in the area and I was like, oh man, what the hell? So got to Livermore, good old Livermore, California. Our little roadmap of Livermore was like Livermore, Danville, San Ramon's. Big old area, big old wealthy area, I guess you can say. Nobody wants to join the military there.
And I remember you mentioning that in the TikTok, in that first TikTok live.
Yeah, so nobody really wants to join the military. Some people do, and if they do, in that area is probably they're gonna join the Air Force and the Navy, right? You know, they say they're smarter than us, and some way they might be. But yeah, like you know, they have the cool engineering jobs and stuff like that. And we just say, oh, we got engineers too, but combat engineers.
Right.
It's a very cutthroat organization as far as recruiting itself because you have a quota to hit. A lot of times we didn't make missions just because that's what it was, right? Because ain't nobody gonna join the military. So instead of a 9-to-5 job, it's long hours and you're doing paperwork and stuff like that, and it's cutting into some of your family time. Yeah, the greatest thing about it is I'm not in the field anymore, right? I'm not not deploying, which is a good thing. At this point, I already had my son, so now I'm at 3 kids. Finally got my son after having 2 girls. I didn't want a 3rd kid, but I ended up having a 3rd kid, and I ended up getting my son, so it worked out. And then so I did 3 years. The first year I was first year and a half, I was full-fledged recruiter going on the streets, trying to get people to join. And then the last year and a half, I kind of ran the recruiting station, which was a lot more work according to it, a lot more paperwork and doing, a lot of trying to make mission and market analysis and stuff like that. So it was a different ball game. So at 3 years, you pretty much, at 2 years, you can either change your MOS, change your job to be a full-fledged recruiter and finish out your career as a recruiter, or go back to your original job, which mine was infantry. Biggest mistake I first made was going to recruiting as an infantry guy. I took over a squad. I got a Bronze Star for my time as a squad leader. Something I'm very proud of, to be honest with you, especially being a very young squad leader. The leadership ability to be able to get awarded, that's something I'm very proud of. But going to recruiting was not a good stepping stone as far as being an infantry guy. I probably should have went to a different duty station or went to drill sergeant. Drill sergeant probably would have been better career progression than recruiting. But I wanted, because drill sergeant, they don't have no time off, bro. They're
always on.
They're always on, right? So one of the reasons why I took recruiting is because I wanted a break from everything, to be honest with you. So a chance to be a little lazy, but not really lazy. So did recruiting. At the end of my 3 years, I decided I was at 12 and a half years at that point. They had me orders to go be an instructor at Fort Bragg, Georgia. I could have re-enlisted to do something else. Like they had a few duty stations. I was like, no, I'm not going to that duty station. There wasn't a duty station I could agree on with my wife at the time. Instructor was there at Fort Benning, so I kind of knew where I was going to go if I would have to re-enlist. But at that point, at 12 and a half years, to get to the 20-year mark, saying, hey, I'm going to do the full 20, I have to give them 8 more years, 7 and a half, 8 more years, somewhere around there. So at that point, I kind of was like, nah, like this is not worth it anymore. I kind of felt like I deployed 3 times. My body's, mind is not where where it used to be in that point. Here I am, I have fractured elbow. I freaking have a messed up ankle that I had fractured that when I was at Fort Bragg too. So the injuries are piling up. The mindset of things, what I've gone through is piling up and stuff like that too. And at that point, my family was more important than my career. So I decided to hang up the boots. Was the hardest decision ever. And I think we're probably transitioning out of the military. So seeing four somewhere around there. So leaving the Army, and I think Trent had brought this up. I think that first TikTok, transitioning out of the military for me was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. I had only had one job my whole life. It was in the Army. The young kid at 18, here I am. At that point, 12 and a half years later.
How old are you at that point?
I can't do the math, bro. 18 plus 12.
12, that's 30?
Yeah, so, so I'm at 30.
And I'm an
30.
accountant too, so
that's somewhere around there in your 30s, 3 kids later, you know what I mean? But all I know is the military. All I know is being an infantry guy. I'm great at it. But at this point, like, I'm just like, my family's more important. It's time to start putting more focus on my family. So, I made the hard decision to leave. And I remember, getting my DD-214 crying, and they're like, damn, what am I doing? Like, it's a big step, not knowing the unknown, right? And I think a lot of veterans that leave the military, regardless if you do it 3 years, 12 years, 20 years, the unknown afterwards is the hardest thing ever. You don't know if you're going to find something you're good at anymore, right? Or you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to succeed at what you're going to do at. So the unknown's the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome mentally. So it was a lot of unknown. One of the reasons why I ended up staying in California, which is crazy, right? Now you can call me a California citizen, and I've been to California. I still got my Texas tattoo, so that's something they could never take away from me. But no, I've been a California citizen, I guess you could say, since 2015.
Yeah, so why? I mean, considering how much pride you have being from Texas, and I've been in the civilian world for a very, very long time.
Yes.
I've only met maybe less than a handful of people that have left Texas and have not gone back.
Yeah, well, for sure. And it's the opposite, right? People leave California and go to Texas.
Yeah.
And I get it. But no, yeah. So I think at that point, if I was going to make a big career move, such as leaving the military after 12 years, it was easier for me to find a job in California.
Okay.
There's a lot of unknown in Texas. I love my mom. I love my grandparents. At this point, my grandpa had passed away while I was in recruiting. My grandma was, towards the end. There wasn't much in Texas anymore, right? Like, what I knew of South Texas, or what I knew about Aldosy, Texas, was nothing, right? Since 2007. So
it was gone.
Yeah. Not only have I changed, they've changed. The city has changed, right? So, I grew up in a sense where I'm like, I got to do something. I left it behind to a point. But you still have that pride, and I still miss it to this day. But I felt like if I would have went back there, it would have been a little bit of a step backwards to a point, right? So yeah, I ended up deciding to stay here in California. It was easier for me to find a job. The transition was going from military to law enforcement, just because I felt that a lot of guys have done it. A lot of guys that are prime military, they become police officers because they have that similar styles as far as the brotherhood, sisterhood kind of things, the adrenaline rush, stuff like that. So here I am looking at police departments in California. Like I said, I only knew Tracy, California, because that's pretty much where I lived at majority of my time. And of course, the Livermore area, because I recruited there. I pretty could have got hired wherever I wanted, to be honest with you. Tracy was my first offer. Antioch, actually, my bad. Antioch was my first offer, and then Tracy was my second offer. And I told Antioch no, that I was going with Tracy, because I had lived in Tracy since 2015, and I kind of knew the area. And then I kind of 24 hours later, I kind of look at the pay scale, and I was like, it was going to take me 4 years, and Tracy, that I was going to make day one in Antioch. So one thing we don't care about in the military, in my opinion, is we don't care how much we get paid. We know we get paid shit, right? So you don't do it for the money. So if you're joining the military for the money, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons, because you're not going to be making a lot of money, even in 2026. So
yeah, you got your priorities all wrong.
Priorities all wrong. So that secret has been out of the bag for years, believe me. So if you're, somebody might have failed to tell you that one, but ended up joining Antioch, telling Tracy no, and then decided to go with Antioch. Never been to Antioch until I did my first interview. One of the reasons why I chose Antioch is when I walked through the doors at Antioch, I felt that brotherhood. It wasn't a big department. It was a very, mid-sized department, but I felt like that brotherhood was honestly there. A lot of guys, prime military, the old school mentality in some type of way, but kind of a little bit of new school mentality, but majority was old school mentality. But I felt like just walking through the doors. We had a great chief, Chief Brooks, who honestly was one of the best chiefs I've had. Luckily, I had him as a chief when I first got here because he changed my outlook on police officing in general. One of the reasons why I made that transition from military to law enforcement, I thought I would never be a cop. It was never in my background. We don't have police officers in our family, right? We don't even have police officers in my little ass city, right? They do now. They have a U.S. Marshal now. I'm not. They have a. I forgot what he's called himself now. Anyways, but yeah, they have one cop. They had 3 cops now in my town. Like I said, moving on up. They just got in jail. Decided to do it, but one of the reasons why I decided to do it because at that point in 2019, in 2026, it's no different. Things have changed. Cops, have a bullseye on them for a lot of dumb shit they've done, and not a lot of good things gets shown on the news, right? So it was the ability to, one, go into our organization, change how the organization thinks, teach them what I was taught in the military, because the military has gone through things a lot of organizations are barely going through. And second of all, my thing was I wanted to leave the organization better than when I first got there and change the opinion of what people think about cops. If you can do that in a state such as California, you're doing it the right way, because California is one of the hardest places to be a cop. It is what it is, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways. But yeah, so ended up choosing Antioch, California, very busy city. One of the reasons why I chose Antioch, because it was very busy. The amount of stuff you're going to go on a month, what it took me, the amount of stuff I was going to see in a month was going to take me years to see in a different police department around that, around Antioch. We have similar police departments and sizes, but they just don't see the call volume that we see. Spent most of my time on patrol, made the SWAT team, was a field training officer, first aid instructor, but majority of my time was on patrol. One of the things I loved about being a cop, like I said, if you do it the right way, it's an easy job. There's a lot of things that we kind of get ourselves into, mostly because we feel like we're macho and we have a badge and we have a gun. We feel better than everybody, right? So, but I feel like in law enforcement, they still have that mentality where they still have that old school mentality, but some cops are not willing to open up about it. Me, like I said, from the get-go, I've always been an open book. I'm open-minded. I'm going to let you know how it is, and it is what it is, right? Like that's how I was raised. And then you get in the Army as an infantry guy, like as a leader, I always just tell my Joes, my guys, like, if you have an issue with me, come with me. We can talk it out. If you have a better plan, we can talk about it, right? But just don't come to me and bitch, right? If you don't have a plan, don't come to me and bitch, right? But I've always been an open book. As a leader, you got to be able to take criticism. And if you can't take criticism, you shouldn't be in a leadership position. You heard me in my first live and my second live. I always make sure I say this, like, I would never bash my police department, my old police department, right? Like, but as far as the career in general, what I tell people is I feel like they're a step backwards when it comes to leadership ability in my ways, in a lot of ways, at least in my police department, because I feel like they still have that old school mentality where they're not willing to overcome and overadapt in a lot of ways, or be able to adapt and take criticism because we did it this way. And I felt like me being vocal in a lot of ways, it rubbed a lot of people off the wrong way, right? Because, he's just bitching about it. But I always had a reason to bitch, and I always had a way to make it better. That's just who I was. That's how I've always been, because I felt like the organization needed to change in a lot of ways. We weren't doing it. And Antioch, like I said, it's a very busy city. These guys are seeing things that honestly that we shouldn't be seeing. I mean, not shouldn't be seeing, but that we're not used to seeing. And like I said earlier, my first live, the hardest job that I've ever had was those 6 years as a cop. 12 years in the military as an infantry guy, you get a little bit of ability to relax after deployment. You have a year, you have 2 years, maybe 3 years if you're lucky, right? But you have the ability to get your mind right in some ways, if you do it the correct way. Was I doing it the correct way? Fuck no, I was not. I was drinking. Yeah, I was spending time with my family, but I was doing a lot of drinking too. So.
And you did mention it in your live TikTok that part of the reason why your time in law enforcement came to an end was because of the way things were done.
Yes. So to a point, I would say that. So I think the biggest hurdle, like I said, this is no secret. Like, if anybody wants to call me out on it, they can call me out on it, right? So I'm not going to sit here on the podcast and lie about something that didn't happen, right? So what happened is I practically, like I said, I ran the first aid program. I always had this sergeant and his lieutenant. He retired as a lieutenant. He always used to tell me, like, hey, like, I used to be you. And one of the reasons why it took me so long to go to lieutenant is because I was too outspoken. And I feel like in law enforcement career, they kind of don't like that. They'd rather you just be, just shut up and not say anything and just do your job, right? That was never me. Like, from a from a sergeant up, I would let it to the chief. I didn't care if it was going to make the police department better. I'm all for it. And if I got to take a counseling for it, it is what it is, right? And a lot of guys respected that. A lot of guys were like, hey, he's willing to speak his mind, right? And a lot of guys love me for that because they didn't have, in my opinion, the balls to talk about it. But it is what it is. What I felt happened, like I said, it's not proven, but I knew it was going to come back to me sooner or later. So my last straw was I had been asking for first aid equipment forever. At this point, probably 3 or 4 months, more than 2 months for sure, that we're not getting first aid equipment in, right? We're going to these calls for service. It's Antioch. It's mini Oakland. If you know where Oakland is, it's a mini Oakland in my eyes. We have a lot of the gang members from Oakland come here, and they got families here now. When market crash, we have similar crime than them, just smaller city. Limited resources like we do too. We don't have first aid equipment. We're going to calls. The guys are getting stabbed, shot. You know what I mean? We're showing up with bare minimum medical equipment that we're piecing together. You know what I mean? And I've been asking forever, like, hey, we're getting it's backlog, whatever. So this was like my finding. At this point, I had seen stuff that, you seen your crashes, I see, taking out an arm, having just the guy's arm, having to ID him to try to take his fingerprint, seeing cars wrapped around, seeing, I don't know how many dead bodies at this point. I think I mentioned at my last TikTok live, I had to take my kid, one of my stepkids. He goes to a Dallas Ranch Middle School, which is right down the road. We had a kid, I want to say he was like 13, 14, ended up getting hit by a van on a skateboard. He was on a skateboard, hits the center median, cracks his skull open, and dies right there and then, right? So they still have his little not plot there, his little remembrance board there, and I still had to drive that in there, and I still remember that stuff too. So the amount of trauma you're seeing as a cop is on a daily basis, and I think what makes it harder is you get 3 to 4 days to kind of reset. That's not enough time, and you're right back at it. And it's a busy city, so you're going to see stuff that a lot of these police departments don't see, and it is what it is. But it's a very busy city with limited resources, and when it comes to trauma, you're going to see it on a daily basis. Not only I'm still not getting the help at that point. At this point, I went through my first divorce. I got a divorce from my first wife. My kids, they leave. I let my wife leave California to go to Colorado. So my kids live in Colorado. I'm going through a divorce. I already went through a divorce. So you take my biggest motivation, which is my kids at this point. They live in Colorado, right? So not only am I going through my PTSD in the military, I'm dealing with a divorce that I thought it would never happen. My kids live in Colorado, right? I don't have the motivation I had. I thought I was going to move to Texas. I didn't move to Texas. So I'm still here in California by myself. I don't have family. So it's a lot of things, right? A lot of things that are hitting me at this point. And then I'm still seeing the trauma that I'm seeing at work, and I'm not dealing with it the right way. At this point, I'm just drinking. Every day off, I'm drinking, staying in my apartment, drinking. That's pretty much what I did. I'd go out every now and then, but I don't like a lot of people. That's just the crazy thing is when people are like, yeah, you became a cop. I don't like people. It is what it is. You know what I mean? But I changed that plug. You had that switch, and I was able to turn that switch on. Okay, good cop. And then when I leave, I don't like people. Still going through all that stuff, still trying to fight to get as much time with my kids because, my ex-wife, what it is. So, yeah, we go through the medical stuff. I don't get it. It's been months. I'm still texting, messaging everybody. And then we go to a call for service. And I think I talked about this the first time, the first TikTok live was a call of I want to say it was 5 or 6, if I remember correctly, shot himself in the head. At this point, out of all the calls I've ever gone to, at this point, some kid calls, but nothing crazy, like choking on something. You got to give them like first aid. You got to give them, chest compression, stuff like that, but nothing too crazy. At this point, I've seen all the dead bodies I could see, but just kids in general, when you have kids, it's a different story. So I already knew it was going to be a gruesome thing. At this time, I have a trainee with me. Like I said, I'm a field training officer. He's driving. I'm passenger. It's not even our call for service. It's a different beat officer's call for service. But I was like, hey, we'll take this for training. One, because the other guy, he has kids too. So I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know if I want him to do it. So I was like, in my opinion, just being a leader, how I was, or being a field training, I was like, I know the call is going to be gruesome. Let me deal with it. Right. I've done with stuff. Let me take the hit. So I didn't even let my trainee go in first. I went in first. I remember going over the radio and they're like, hey, get all the medical equipment you have, knowing that we didn't have any, honestly. I have my own stuff that I keep passenger side, but it's mainly for me, other police officers, or for kids that I bought myself, that I purchased myself. So I get there, honestly, not much we can do. He shot himself with a Glock. Fire department showed up. They did a great job taking the kid out of the house so the family member doesn't have to see him at this. They already seen him, so it's already a disaster. You got grandma crying, yelling. You got grandpa crying, yelling. At this point, I'm already emotional because it's a kid. The kid's only 5 or 6 at this point. He's about the size of my kid, who's 8, 9 at this point. So I'm having like flags, thinking it's my kid. So I know there's so much happening so fast. So the fire department does a good job taking the body, knowing that he's very dead at this point. Go through that. I kind of already knew it. Like I was like, man, I don't think I've had a call like this that literally fucked me up, to be honest with you. So we go through the call. We're still there. Not only that we have to clear the call, now we're investigating the call. We have to arrest grandpa. Grandma is yelling, crying. She has to call her daughter to let him know. So it's a lot of things just happening at once. And one of the good things I could say, there's a lot of good things about Antioch Police Department, but one of the good things I can say about them is when it comes to mental health, they paid a mental health services for us, right? So if we need to go speak to somebody, it's all anonymous. You can go, on your off time, and nobody will ever know about it. But you just got to be willing to want to do it. And a lot of us are not willing to do it because that stigma's there, right? We're not willing to do it. We're not willing to get the help. We call it a weakness. That's how it is. That stigma in the military and law enforcement. So yeah, we had leadership there. We had our IR sergeant, another guy showing there the chief wasn't there. We had other guys over there making sure we're good. Luckily, one of the things they did is the fire department has like a little fire department dog too that deals with their stress, helps with stress and stuff like that. We had it that same night. We got with the firefighters. They brought pizza. They brought the dog. We talked about it, but I was still fucked up. I want to say 2 days off. And then third day, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to get back to work, right? Because I think the only thing for me, the only way to fully recover is just to get back to work, get into the swing of things instead of being, at this point, like I'm dealing with it bad. I'm sitting in my room. I'm drinking. I'm remarried at this point. And then, I'm just sitting in the dark, just like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, this shit sucks. And then I'm letting anger take over, right? Because I'm asking for first aid equipment. I'm showing up to a call for service where this kid's got his head blown off, and I don't even have the necessary tools to do my job, right? And that's one thing about Antioch Police Department. I'm not going to say it's all their fault. I'd probably say the city council that we had prior to what we have now is probably their fault a lot because budget-wise, they took a lot. But we've always been behind the curve. I mean, I dealt with it, right? In the military, I'm sure the Marines, I'm sure the Army's the same way. There's a lot of tools that we didn't have. I wish that we would have had, but we worked with what we got. But in Antioch, we have cars sometimes that feel like they're going to blow up. We won't even get to call for service. I can't get first aid equipment, right? Like first aid equipment is like a $60 thing. You should be able to get that, right? It should be something that I'm given easily. But here we are, it is what it is. So third day comes around. I want to say it's third, fourth day, somewhere similar to that. I go back to work. I'm still not fully there in my mind, but I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off because I've been asking for first aid equipment forever. First aid equipment, chief finally comes into a roll call. They want to break down the call again. We already talked about it. I'm not wanting to talk about it. So you bring it up again, I'm going to get pissed. So chief says something similar to like, what can we learn? What could we have done better? And like I said, police officer Cesar Tanguma, who's always outspoken, decides to tell him, hey, you're at city council hall trying to get 2 up-armored vehicles, but I can't even get a simple fucking first aid kit. Like, how fucked up are we? And it's true. It is, right? You're trying to get 2 up-armored SWAT vehicles. Cool, I'm SWAT. Cool, it is what it is. We're not using those up-armored vehicles as much. And even when we do, it is what it is. If I can't get a $60 kit, why are you trying to get a multi-$1,000 piece of equipment when I can't get something as simple as $60? So yeah, tell him that. I can tell he gets pissed off. He says he doesn't get pissed off, but I can tell. Send him a message, and I was like, hey, sorry that I blew up. I was blunt about it. He said he took it, but I don't know. I'd probably say a week later, I found out I had an IA that was almost a year ago from that day.
What's an IA?
It's like pretty much an internal investigation.
Oh, okay.
So it was a counseling statement, to your point. Something I did. So I was all like, okay. I kind of knew it was something that happened. So practically what happened is I was going through dealing with trauma and stuff like that. I was dealing with a lot of stuff. Like my wife had a miscarriage. We're working unlimited we're working like forced overtime. We're losing officers because Antioch goes through this text message scandal where they send these racist text messages. So we lost 20, I don't know how many officers we lost. So we're working just crazy overtime, dealing with the miscarriage. My wife's dealing with the miscarriage. So I took a day off, right? I said, hey, I'm sick. I'm not sick. It is what it is. I went to go get some drinks with my wife. So with that, The cops ended up getting called to my house that day because my kids got into they cut their hand here, cut open his hand. Now the cops are here, right? Cops are wondering, hey, where's Caesar, right? He's supposed to be at work. I'm not at work, right? I'm out drinking with my wife, right? So yeah, so I kind of knew. And then lieutenant that was in charge at that point didn't really like me because I was very outspoken and I kind of like rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I kind of had an idea. And a lot of my friends were saying, oh, he's asking about you and blah, blah, blah. He's asking about this and that. So I kind of knew it was going to come down. I just didn't know when. And at that point, a year later, I was like, okay, it's never going to come, because I think in law enforcement, they kind of do those things where, like, if they got paper on you, they're going to hold on to it. And then when they bring it out, they're going to bring it out.
They're going to pull out that Uno card.
This is like, it's not proven. I'm not going to say that this is what happened. This is what I believe happened. So it ended up happening. Got an IA, went through the IA process. Initially, it is right there. I'm not going to sit here and lie. The first time I lied the first time. I told them, like, hell no, I was dealing with PTSD stuff. Like, nah. Then I came clean. I was like, okay, cool. I did go out. I went out with my wife. It is what it is, right? This is why I went out with my wife. So yeah, I came clean the second time. I remember the IA sergeant was like, yeah, he's like, that ballsy of you. I think you're probably gonna save your job with that, right? But knowing that they really didn't like me, it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, just how outspoken I was, and I knew it was gonna catch up to me sooner or later. So they ended up letting me go. Went through the process, tried to fight it, and I was like, you know what? I always had an idea I was gonna leave. I just didn't know when. Being a cop was not going to be my full-time career, my retirement career. I'm not going to retire at 55, being old and barely walking. And I was going to leave on, I wanted to leave on when I wanted to leave. So I started knocking out my education, knocked out my bachelor's, knocked out my master's, and I did it in criminal justice. But I knew I was going to switch over to the corporate security side sometime. I just didn't think it was going to be as soon as it did. After getting fired, I went through a little bit of downfall, right? Because it's the last job I've known for 6 years. A lot of the guys are like, man, we miss you. Like I said, I still have great friends there. And like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, people are going to be like, oh, no, he got fired. He's a shitty cop. I was a great cop. I went out there every day doing it the right way. Yeah, I get people attitude. I'm not a fun guy all the time, but, when you're getting, constantly, cussed out all the time, you're going to bring a little bit of attitude. But when it comes to the job every day, one of the things I strive to do was go back to that mission that I initially had as a cop. And that was to change the aspect of what people think about cops. So when I used to go for calls for service, I don't care if it was a call as easy as a theft. If I'm there for an hour and we're talking about my upbringing, talking about, hey, my mom was alcoholic, I was raised with no dad. And, this is how I was raised. And, this is what I deal with. And they were like, oh, man. And I had one of the guys, man, you're a cool ass cop, right? You're a cool cop. Like, we can talk to you. Like, you're just like a normal person. And why I did that, right, is one, to change the aspect of what they think about cops, but it was always planting a seed. And planting a seed was very important, right? Because if I'm getting my ass whipped on the side of the road and he decides to see me getting my ass whipped, he's probably going to help me, right? Because he remembers that conversation that he had with me, right? So I'm planting that seed. So that was my ability to be able to do that every day and to be able to talk to people that I really didn't have much relationships with or anything in common, because I'm a small town Texas kid and here they are in the Bay Area. But we have a lot of things similar, right? Because, a lot of these guys that go through trials and tribulations, they don't have dads. They're raised by grandma. Their mom's alcoholic or a drug addict or something similar to that. It's just what you do. It's what you do with that that's going to make you successful, right? I don't use it as a crutch. I use it as motivation to get to where I want to in life, right? And have I failed in life? Yeah, in some type of ways. The cop thing, like I said, 6 years. It was great. I did a lot of great things. SWAT team, field training officer. Did a lot of good things in the public. Was always out there giving, food to the homeless, Christmas presents to, single mothers. We did that. Me and my wife do that on a monthly basis, or not a yearly basis, with our own money, right? Because my wife's real big in giving back to the people, and I've always loved giving back to somebody that doesn't have it, especially single mothers, right? Because there was times I only had one present under the tree, and I know that a lot of stress that she dealt, my mom at the time dealt with, come Christmas time. So. I always did that on my own appeal. I never did let the police department, like, they do their own kind of things when it comes to that kind of stuff. But those are the things I always tried to do. And did I leave in the best of terms, police world? No, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I left in the best of terms. Probably not how I wanted to leave. Did I leave wanting to accomplish everything that I did? I probably say majority of it I did, to be honest with you. Like, I made SWAT. I was a field training officer. I was a good patrol cop. I have friends to this day. They're like, man, like, we miss you on the streets. We always knew that you had our back, and you always were able to overcome and over adapt anything. And that came from the training. I came, coming from the infantry and stuff like that. And the crazy thing is, what I used to tell trainees as a field training officer, I almost failed FTO training, because I couldn't just get the grasp of police world, right? Or how to do things as a cop, right? Because like I said earlier in this podcast, as an infantry guy, shoot, move, communicate, react, contact, break, contact. That's all you fucking need to know, right? There's not much to it. But as a cop, it's something that constantly changes. And now I got to do this. I got to do this. And I was like, oh, man, what the hell? Like,
It's a whole nother monster.
yeah. So it was hard, man. And laws are changing. You got to do things this way. And then no call for service is the same. So you're like, when you're starting to think you're picking it up, and then another curveball starts, so it's harder. So I almost failed field training officer training. And I remember Chief Brooks would not let me give up. And that's one of the reasons why I truly enjoyed being a leader, being under him, right? Because he was the leader that when he walked in, he was always there early, there late, always knew your name. He always called you by your first name. And that means a lot to me, right? Because and everybody's like, man, he knows my name, right? Every birthday, you have a birthday card in your box, right? So those things go a long way, building that trust and credibility went a long way. So I felt like when we lost him, our police department went down a little bit, but he was the type of leader I wanted to be, that I strived to be as a cop, and that some of the best leaders I had in the military. But yeah, so I ended up leaving, or ended up getting fired. It is what it is. Took a little months off. I think I talked about this later, and then transitioned to what I currently do right now.
You've been open about some of your struggles.
Yeah.
Open. You know what? Let me rephrase that. You've been open about a lot of your struggles, and I appreciate your openness.
Yeah.
What were some of the hardest seasons of your life?
I mean, bro, honestly, when I got a divorce, it was the biggest struggle of my life. One of the reasons why I let my kids leave California and go to Colorado is because I literally told myself this. I've been through a deployment. I've been through everything. I've been through hell and back. I should be able to deal with it, right? Oh, yeah, they're just miles away. No, totally wrong, right? You take your motivation away, somebody that you raise and you get to hug every day. And, and it's crazy because my relationship with my oldest daughter has changed a little bit, right? Because I've been in California. She's been in Colorado. So not only are they living in Colorado, I'm still dealing with a lot of drinking and stuff like that. Still dealing with my divorce. I didn't do the correct way. I'm living in a apartment. Living a single life, I guess you can say. Drinking, still working, still dealing with the trauma that I'm seeing on a daily basis. And then you throw in there, I remember, when Tibbs committed suicide, my best friend from Fort Bragg, and I clearly remember this when he committed suicide. The day before he did it, he had started posting some stuff on Instagram, and I kind of had an idea, right? Like, well, what's going on? Something's happening, right? And I remember reaching out to him, like, hey, bro, you need help, right? Like, what's going on? You can call me. He's like, no, I'm good, right? Because that's our answer to everything. No, I'm good. I don't need help. Like, yeah, everything's good, bro. Thank you, appreciate it. And we're not willing to be open and not willing to be vocal about the struggles that we're going through. And I knew that he was going through a separation with his wife at the time, and I knew he had a new girlfriend and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff he was going through, I've been through. I was going through it too, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of knew how hard it was, right? And just seeing the signs there, and then a day later he commits suicide, and losing your best friend, it was crazy. It was nuts. And what sucked though too is I hadn't seen him since I left Fort Bragg, right? I seen him on FaceTime, right? We'd FaceTime every now and then, but physically I hadn't seen him, right? And I look back and I'm like, man, it kind of sucks, right? I should have made time. But we get caught up in our careers, we get caught up in our families, having kids and stuff like that, and I kind of get it. But then I was like, damn, it's too late. And those 2 days, I remember luckily I was on my off days, bro. I stayed up 48 hours just drinking, and I was getting to the point where I was drinking. And I was so drunk that I was talking to him thinking he was right next to me, but he wasn't. And it was the hardest point because I was like, dude, like I lost my best friend. And it was like, out of all my friends, even in Texas, and I have a lot of great friends in Texas, right? This guy meant the most to me, right? Because we went through hell and back. Like we went through the struggles in the military, and I felt like we grew up together in the military together, right? Even though he was a supply guy, I was an infantry guy, but we were in the same company. He was a supply guy, and we went through a lot of stuff together. And you lose somebody like that, and he was doing good for his career, you know what I mean? But he was dealing with a lot of PTSD because he was a normal supply guy in our unit. Then he went to do supply for Green Berets, and then he went to do supply for CAG. So he was doing a lot of deployments with these high speed guys, right? And doing a lot of stuff they're doing, and he just wasn't doing it the correct way, mentally wise, taking care of himself. And it ultimately caught up to him. And then you throw a stressor such as a divorce, right?
Yeah.
And it's the ultimate stressor. And, he ultimately gave up, and I'm like, damn, you lose him. And at this point you've lost friends already that you're like, dude, like how did this guy commit suicide? And I'm still here. Right. And it's nuts, right? Because everything that I've gone through, I've seen stronger people give up and commit suicide. And it's been hard because I've been that guy, like, if he's gone through that, like, and I'm a statistic of war in a lot of ways. But one thing I would never allow myself is be a statistic of suicide. And I've had that gun to my head. I've had it in my mouth. One of the reasons why I didn't do it is my kids. Honestly, my kids have been my biggest motivation, regardless if they live in, Colorado. Here I am now with my second wife. I have 3 stepkids. I just had, my youngest son's about to be a year. And then, of course, after after leaving the police department, I get in a DUI. Now I'm in a cell, that around. Well, luckily, the good thing is it was the county that I used to work in, so they knew I was a prior cop. So they didn't put me in with local population. They threw me in a cell by myself to kind of protect me, right, from guys that I arrested. But with that, I do not like tight spaces. I can't be in rooms by myself, right? So now you have me there for 24 hours, right? Because I'm trying to sober up. I think I blew a 0.7 or something like that. 0.5. I was completely over the limit. 1.7, I think. So yeah, I was completely over the limit. So yeah, I had to go through that. And then I remember sitting there for 24 hours and then finally sober up. And then, from that day, I haven't drank a beer. And that's, another trials and tribulations that I have to go on through. And I think a lot of that stuff was, I lose my job. I started a new job. Then I get a DUI. I'm still dealing with custody, trying to get as much as I can, because I feel like when it comes to, divorce and custody stuff, the court system's kind of against you if you're a man, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, right? So I'm fighting that in a lot of ways. And I'm a great dad. Like, the one thing that you can never take away from me is, like, I can fail in life, but I will never fail being a dad. Like, I would literally get off of work, get on a plane, 2 hours of sleep, go to Colorado, jump back off the plane and start work. And I do that on a monthly basis because I knew how it is growing up without a dad, right? So I always tell myself, I don't care how much, I'll eat ramen noodles for the rest of my life. I'm going to be there for my kids, right? So like next weekend, like, I get off of work, I get on a plane, spend time with my kids, come back, sleep in my car for 3 hours and go right back to work for 5 days. So, those are just some of the trials and tribulations that have been in back of my mind forever and that I still struggle with on a daily basis. And, one of the reasons why, we talked about earlier, to get back to Operation Iron Mind in general, is I'm finally at that point where I've gone through so much in life that I can start helping other people out. And you put a platform such as TikTok, social media in general, this platform can help a lot of people out in a lot of ways, right? Because there's so many people. There's a reason why the military and law enforcement have high divorce rate, right? Because one, a lot of us are not willing to get the help. We deal with it the wrong way. Our spouses might be tired of us in some ways.
They want to get off that ride.
They want to get, and I get it, right? And, I can't blame for somebody that's been on the ride for me for 12 and a half years and decides to hop off, right? It is what it is, you know what I mean? And we just don't deal with it the right way in a lot of ways. So, as I look back at now and in 2026, it's, 2026 is a new year for me, right? I have started Operation Iron Mind. I'm sober now. Do I still want to drink some beer sometimes? Yeah, of course I do. But I find myself not wanting it as much as I used to. I can walk through a beer aisle now and be like, yeah, I don't want this beer anymore, right? Like, I don't even look at it anymore, which is crazy to finally say that, right? I kind of cheat. I do drink non-alcoholic beer. I won't lie. Sometimes, majority of the time. But if I have a stressful day, I kind of drink non-alcoholic beer. But yeah, it's been a lot of things that you got divorce, you got deployments, you got your kids, custody battle, you got court battle. Here I am in this, thinking I have what my grandpa had, a house, and I'm successful in my career. This nice house I buy in California, and I lose it all, because I'm going through a divorce. It's a lot of things that honestly people commit suicide, right? A lot of things, reasons why people commit suicide. And, I was at the brink of ending it more than enough times. And, here I am with me and my wife and my 3 kids at the point. And then here I am sitting in a, one bedroom, about 2-bedroom house, 2-bedroom apartment with my dog. And that's all I have left. Right. And what I have in my bank account. And I still have my job, God bless. But at that point, it's just like, here I am in this little ass apartment. And all I would do is drink. And then like, dude, like, I used to have everything. I had my kids, I had my wife, I had all the American dream people wanted. And you just go through life and stuff like that. And, it's the struggles are always going to be there. And then you throw PTSD and you throw, like, no, that should never happen to Tibbs, or that should never happen to Childs, or Tommy Nealon and stuff like that. And those are guys that you grew up in the military with, and you're like, man, like if they had something similar to what I'm trying to push out there, maybe it would have helped to a somewhat. But yeah. So there's been a lot of things, man. Like you bring up, even early on in life, right? Not having a dad, that's something I still deal with at 37, right? So if you're not ultimately trying to get back to the roots of your mental health, and that's as a newborn to your your adolescence, from your teenage years to even your adult years, you got to go back to the root of things. And the root of things is, I've always brushed off the root of things, and I'm slowly getting back to it. And the great thing is, like, the counselor I have now, she used to work with military people, but she's a recovering alcoholic too, so it kind of helps me out in a lot of ways. But the best counselors I've ever had have been prior military guys or prior law enforcement guys, just because of the ability to be able to talk about things that no people don't understand, right? I can sit here all day and they don't understand what the fuck I said. They just got a degree.
Yeah, they've been through the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a little bit about the struggle and everything.
Well, that was more than what I was expecting, and I think you answered like the next 3 questions. Thank you so much. I appreciate your openness with that. I know that was you saw me break down when you started talking about Tibbs. Yeah, that definitely hit, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yes.
And again, thank you so much for opening it and being an open book. I just want to lighten the tone really quick. I was texting my wife really quick because I have 2 brothers-in-law that served in the military. One served in the Marine Corps, and unknowingly we served at the same unit at the same time. Okay. The other one went Army, and guess where he was at?
82nd?
82nd Airborne.
Yep.
So
hey, I tell you, we're the best of best.
So I was like, fuck, I knew he was a jumper, and she hasn't got back to me from what years, but I know it was the late 90s.
Okay. Yeah.
If anything, I'll probably get corrected on that down the road. But I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah, I'm like, shit, he served in the same unit as you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's literally, it's a prideful thing when you hear somebody from the 82nd Airborne Division. You're like, man, yeah, regardless of what years you are. And that's kind of what they drill into you. It's kind of like, I'd probably say the Marines tradition wise is similar to what the 82nd Airborne. I wish every unit in the Army was like the 82nd Airborne, right? Because nobody could talk shit about us. But then you have guys that, maybe Fort Hood or, Fort Bliss, and they don't care about standards and they're fat. And I'm like, bro, come on, bro. Like, you got to look good, dude. Like, be prideful. And I feel like that pride thing has kind of gotten away in a lot of ways, but I guarantee the 82nd is still the same fucking thing.
That wraps part 3 of Caesar Tanguma's story. His story continues and concludes in episode 58 of Chat 62 as we move into the next chapter. The personal battles, the rebuilding, and the mission behind Operation Iron Mind. Be sure to follow and subscribe on whatever platform you listen on. Until next time, remember that your story matters. Semper Fi.
Struggling? You're not weak. You're human. Dial 988, then press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line. Train support that understands veterans. Stay the course. Thank you, Ozzy.